This is Eddie Hearn, Matchroom Boxing. You are watching Sporting Icons. You don't need to be anywhere else.
All right, everyone, I hope you're all doing fantastic. So I've been seeing a lot of comments over the last couple of hours asking me the question of have I seen George Warren's interview on TalkSport today, where he gave Queensberry's side of the story as to why the Fury-Joshua fight has potentially fallen apart. And I say potentially, I use that word very loosely. But I've also seen quite a few comments of quite clearly some Tyson Fury fanatics. Why Sporting Icons not responded about George Warren yet? If this is Eddie Hearn, he would already put out a video and all that kind of stuff. Listen, at the very beginning of each and every one of my videos, a logo pops up, right? Duchenne, all right? That pops up. I don't put that on there just for the sake of things, all right? Today is one of those days where my little boy, my son, has his infusions done. Okay, so I don't exactly just sit in like a little one-bedroom flat and this is all I do. I have a family, I have responsibilities like everybody else, okay? Be a little bit patient, all right? If this had happened yesterday, I'd have had more time. If it happened tomorrow, I'd have probably had more time in a more timely fashion, all right? I shouldn't have to explain it. I said I don't put these things up at the beginning and at the end of every video just for the hell of it, all right? Anyway, so yes, I watched the George Warren podcast, if you like, with TalkSport. Firstly, George Warren. I like George Warren. I've said this quite some time ago. I think George Warren comes across really, really well. And I feel that if Frank Warren was to hand the reins over at some point, George Warren should be the guy. He's the kind of guy that could drag Queensberry boxing into this particular era. I do feel that Queensberry boxing, and I've outlined reasons why, is very outdated. And to be honest with you, a lot of it is down to the punchy teams and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, I think that George Warren can do for Queensberry like what Eddie Hearn has done for Matchroom Boxing. I genuinely do. So hopefully that happens at some point. Anyway, that said, so George Warren, he came across very, very well. Now, based on what Eddie Hearn has been saying yesterday, and based on what George Warren has said today, obviously, listen, both of them are going to defend their stable. They're fighters. We know that. At no point is Eddie Hearn going to come out and say, yeah, I don't think Anthony Joshua really won that fight. That ain't going to happen. Likewise, George Warren ain't going to come out and say, I don't think Tyson Fury really wanted that fight. He's playing games. That is never going to happen, okay? That's reality. But based on what Eddie Hearn said yesterday, I felt that he was stumbling a little bit at times. I do. At no point when he was asked a question of, are you sabotaging this fight? Do you really want this fight? All that kind of stuff. At no point did he go, don't be so stupid. Of course I want this bloody fight. At no point did he do that. That disappointed me a little bit. It did. But that doesn't mean that he was sabotaging the fight. It just means I wasn't happy with his direct answers. Now, going by the things that Eddie Hearn was saying about the endorsements and the fight taking a long time, of course, we all understand that, or most of us understand that. Unfortunately, there are a minority who don't. There's a minority out there. For some reason, the educational system has let them down, where they seem to think that a contract is Anthony Joshua accepted a 60-40 split, a 50-50 for a rematch, if he wins the fight, of course, for December the 3rd in Cardiff. That's all the contract is. Just sign the contract because they don't know any better. George Warren knows better. Frank Warren knows better as well. Both George and Frank have given the impression that they weren't happy as well with the time constraint of Tyson Fury saying, has to be done by Monday or the fight's off. And it has to be done by Wednesday or the fight's off, whenever it was. They weren't happy with that either. Now, we do have to say, though, as well, the fact that Eddie Hearn, he says that they've had no contact with Queensberry ever since they sent back the final draft of the contract. They've heard nothing back from Queensberry. The last conversation they had with Queensberry, i.e. George Warren, was on that Thursday night. George Warren said the last time he spoke to Eddie Hearn was on that particular day. But he's been trying to get hold of Eddie Hearn. Eddie Hearn has not been responsive. He has been responding to the emails, the phone calls, the text messages, all that kind of good stuff. Now, I believe George Warren on this one because I have first-hand experience with this with Eddie Hearn. And I mentioned it to a lot of people. Do you have the same problems? And every single one of them, some of them very, very close to Eddie Hearn, laugh it off and go, yeah, that's Eddie. If you want a response from Eddie Hearn, good luck. They all say that. And some of them are big-time players as well. Big-time players. Eddie Hearn doesn't respond. For me, I see that as very, very unprofessional. I do. So I believe George Warren, where Matchroom Eddie Hearn is not responding in a timely fashion. Okay? Now, to weigh up everything that Eddie Hearn said, yes, there's a lot of truths of what Eddie Hearn said. Of course there is. There's a lot of things that's going on, a lot of legal things that they have to iron out. They have to. And it's a bit more than just the network deals as well. Okay? By the looks of it, Queensberry wanted to appoint an arbitrator to go through it, like a chunk of it, things that are kind of like not really their business, but the arbitrator is apparently an ally of Queensberry, so they weren't too happy about that. Again, we can understand that. If you're going to bring in an arbitrator, at least have somebody who's neutral. Okay, so again, I think most people can agree on that, to be fair. But as I like to say, to weigh up everything that Eddie Hearn said, and then weigh up everything that George Warren said, I'm more inclined right now to believe George Warren. George Warren come across very, very clear. He didn't stumble his words. He didn't go round the houses. He answered them directly. So I get the impression, even if nobody else on Team Fury wanted to fight, George Warren did. I feel George Warren was doing everything that he can to make the fight. And I understood George Warren's frustration with not getting responses in a timely manner. I understood that. Because again, he's going to have Tyson Fury saying to George, right, what's the update? What's happening? Then George will go, well, I'm waiting to hear back maybe later on today, maybe tomorrow morning. We should have an answer on that particular subject. Tomorrow morning comes and they still don't have an answer. So Tyson's going, well, what the hell's going on? George is obviously going to go, I don't know, I'm still waiting. I've tried to get hold of them, but they're not responding. That's obviously going to give the impression for Tyson that, well, maybe Team Joshua don't want the fight. We can understand that, okay? So he's made that a bit clearer to what maybe I was thinking beforehand. Now, at the same time, we can all agree that Tyson Fury pulling out is a very childish thing to do. Very disappointing to do, because now you're going to be negotiating with whoever it is next, whether it be Derek Chisora, which apparently, again, George Warren has confirmed that they sent in an offer, a contract to Derek Chisora. Even though I told you this, and Eddie Hearn told you this, well, Eddie Hearn said it, and then of course I repeat what Eddie Hearn said, and some Tyson Fury fans saying, no, that's not true. Well, George Warren has told you that is true. We know that Manuel Char has also agreed to take the fight as well. All right? So by the time you get all those kind of agreements and go through the terms and the conditions and the contract and everything like that for any fighter, maybe you should have just carried on with the Joshua one. Maybe you'd ironed out these last few details. But again, George Warren did back up what Eddie Hearn was saying. And he was saying about the broadcasting deals as well. They're not done. They have agreed in principle on things. There's a lot of things that go into these contracts. These mega fights take a hell of a long time. A hell of a long time. George Warren understood that. I think the only person who didn't understand that was Tyson. He's very, very erratic, very impulsive, is probably the best way to put it. I do get the impression that Tyson didn't really want the fight because he honestly thought that Anthony Joshua was going to not take the fight. That's why he put it in there, just so we can go fight Manuel Char or whoever. Say, well, I tried to fight Joshua, but the big shit house of Dossa, he didn't want it, all that kind of good stuff. That's why I'm fighting this person. In other words, justifying fighting somebody that we don't want to see him fight, right? I do feel that is true. But as far as what George Warren was saying, well done, George. I have no reason to disbelieve anything that George Warren was saying. Of course, he's going to be defending his team, Queensberry and Tyson Fury. Of course. He's never going to say, yeah, Tyson ruined this. We did all that hard work and that big 6'9" toss pot just ruined it. He ain't going to do that, is he? Of course he isn't. Even if he feels Tyson Fury was totally wrong, he ain't going to say that, okay? So we do have to be objective on this. We do have to be fair. And yeah, I think, as I said before, if I'm going to believe anybody right now, I'm more likely or I'm more inclined to believe George Warren on this particular subject right now, based on the fact that Matchroom weren't really responsive in a timely manner. Almost like they had other things to do, and this was just something just to fit in between. That's the impression that I got. But who knows? I'm sure Eddie Hearn will respond to George Warren's comments to maybe clear up some of the things that don't make Eddie Hearn look too favourable. Anyway, drop your thoughts below, click thumbs up, subscribe. Catch you next video.